All right. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about your journey into your career,
Mhm, mhm.
and to what point did you actually start to incorporate health as a focal?
Yeah, yeah. So it started in consulting, right? And so I was an engineering grad in undergrad, and I loved solving problems, but I felt like it more of a business orientation was more my pathway, but I didn't know kind of what direction. And so, like many young aspiring business people, I was like, all right, consulting, right? Where do you go to just learn and hopefully figure out what you're going to do in life? And so I did a couple tours of duty at McKinsey, both right out of undergrad and then after business school, and did everything, right? I was kind of like, I got into consulting to see kind of and figure out my place. And so I was very much a generalist. I did everything from entertainment to industrial stuff to mining to, transportation, healthcare, consumer, right? Did a little bit of everything. Nothing kind of felt like my thing. I think the things that caught my attention the most, there were some things that I did in healthcare that was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't think I want to go healthcare for specifically, but I do like this aspect of helping people. And then there was a consumer pathway as well. I was like, oh, I really like things that I can touch and feel and relate to. And it really came around the opportunity with the Wonderful Company. So for those aren't familiar, the Wonderful Company is currently about a $6 billion family owned business, all in healthy food and beverages. So they own Fiji Water and Palm Wonderful, and they're big in almonds and pistachios and wine and flowers. And they actually had opportunity for general management roles. They like to recruit a lot of folks that had backgrounds like mine and just put them in operating roles within the business. And so it was a great jumping off point. And I love the fact that it was consumer and that it was healthy side of food and beverage. And that's where it came together for me. I was like, okay, this is my calling, this is my pathway. Like seeing something that I personally had always cared about, which was, physical fitness and wellness and healthy eating, and being able to apply that in a professional setting. It was like it felt like worlds coming together. And that's where it really was cemented in me that this is my pathway. And I've been really fortunate since then to essentially pattern my career in this space of all things better for you, whether it was food and beverage or supplements or fitness, right? Beachbody or just overall wellness. So I would say that was kind of the first area where I got my first real job, right, at the Wonderful Company, and then carried it on from there.
And just curious, did you do an internship that was not consulting when you were in business school? Because you came in
I did.
McKinsey, left McKinsey. What did you do
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the summer?
Yeah, yeah. So I did a startup. It's actually still around. It's a startup called Quinn Street. I think they've evolved business model since then. But so that was back in the day, in the heyday, in the dot-com boom and bust era, because it was 2000 was the year that in between my
Right,
first,
right,
second year of
smack
business
dab.
school. And so first year of business school, we're all sitting there in class, like, what the hell are we doing here? People are out creating XYZ.com and they're billionaires overnight. And we're sitting here studying, like, what are we doing? And so everybody went out west, right, for the summer. And I did too, right? So I came out to San Fran and worked for a startup for the summer. It was a great experience. I knew I didn't want to work at that startup, but I was like, got to see the vibe. More importantly, I met my wife that summer. So that's the most important outcome of the summer. Shout out to you, to Kayla. But then it was fascinating because year two of business school, everybody was back in Boston, like, thank God we're in business school, like shielded from the dot-com bust and all this craziness of all this layoffs and everything. And I was one of the fortunate folks that, was sitting there with my offer already, right? Because, that was part of the deal with McKinsey and many other consulting firms, et cetera. Is like they actually can sponsor you to go back to school and have an offer to return. And so I was like, I absolutely want to take you up on this offer to come back to consulting.
So it was a combination of you explored a little bit, but at the end of the day, it was an interesting time, and you
Oh,
kind of had
yeah.
to go with the option that the bird in hand. We had a similar situation.
Absolutely.
I was in business school during the '08
Yep.
session. I was a Merrill Lynch fellow, same deal. With
Uh-huh.
that summer, Lehman fell. A lot of the second years basically had job offers that were rescinded,
Absolutely.
kind
It's
of out
crazy.
there, and I was fortunate enough to have something in hand. So fast forward almost 10 years later, went through the same experience. Okay, so how did you navigate your way? And obviously, again, I mentioned the resume. President of Beachbody. That is not a small job. How did you navigate your way upwards in this industry? How did you
Yeah.
choose which companies that you want to focus on? And ultimately, what did you learn, in that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, from the wonderful company, I cut my teeth in general management. It was one of the best things about that experience. Being, in a privately held business, a pretty flat organization. Um, the great thing is you got opportunities. When you did a good job in one, that was like the best sign that you're going to do a good job in something else. And they kind of follow that ethos. And so that ends up giving you opportunities for things that you're not even essentially qualified for. Right. And so it ended up for me being the CFO of the wonderful company. At the time, it's about a $4 billion business. I am not an accountant, right? I mean, my accounting class in business school was about the extent of my accounting knowledge, but I knew business, right? And I knew how to work with numbers. I knew how to build teams and manage teams, right? And so it gave me a great opportunity. So, but from there, I was like, listen, I love doing this and supporting the business, but I'm an operator at the end of the day. I need to get back in the game, right? And so Beachbody found me. Like it was another situation where an entrepreneurial driven company, they had some great success, but they were looking to scale, right? And so they really wanted someone to come in as president, chief operating officer to partner with the founders
How
to help
big was
scale the
how big was
business.
Beachbody at the time when
Yeah. So when I joined, it was about 650 million top line business. And most of that business was, and how most people know Beachbody is fitness, right? At home fitness, right? They were the absolute leaders in this space, the
can you just throw out some of the brands?
P90X.
Yeah, throw out some of the
Yeah,
brands.
yeah. So P90X, Tony Horton, Insanity for Sean T. Those are some of the more popular brands that they knew over time. And so they really built their awareness in at-home fitness, right? But they had started to get onto the nutrition game, right? And seeing that nutrition is so essential for overall health. It's actually, frankly, more important than exercise is what you put in your body because you cannot out exercise a bad diet. They're realizing this and also getting some traction, in particular in a shake business that they had started. And so my background being more in the nutrition side, they're like, you think there's opportunity here? It's also like the wheels are falling off, right? So we got to scale this thing. And so that was, when I came in, it was a large part of my focus as a marketing officer. It was a mandate to scale, like, and in particular nutrition. And yeah, we had a ton of success. So we actually, within a 2 to 3 year time frame, we doubled the business. It got it up to about a $1.3 billion business, almost all in the backs of nutrition, right? Scaling with a superfood health shake, which is called Shakeology. Fitness always remain a core part of the business. It's in the ethos. It's kind of in the blood, especially for the founders. But frankly, it's a bigger nutrition business than it is a fitness business. Now, after going through what we did,
Interesting. And was it a privately owned company at the time as well?
yeah, it was. They did have some private equity investors, but it was majority held by the founders still. Yeah, and you asked kind of what I learned. Like there was some incredible learnings from that business. I'd say one of the fundamental things was just how to scale at scale, right? I mean, how to build something that really has potential to continue to build an effective way. But at the same time, like I mentioned, like it was a bit of operating out of control, if you will, in particular on the nutrition side of business. So there was some like building the plane in flight type of deal. Like we were scaling the business, but it's falling apart, right? So that required a significant amount of focus, some strategy, some infrastructure, some rebuilding in order to be able to do both of those at the same time. I'd say another factor which I carried with me, the business was really effective at connecting not just as a business, but with the individual. And how do you orient people to make healthier decisions a part of their everyday habit? And connecting with, and it goes beyond just a product. Like there's a vibe, there's a feeling, there's a connection, and in large part there's a community, right? And so I saw these ways as to how to break through and connect with individuals to orient them in a healthier direction, because I think we all know to live a healthy life, it's not just one thing. There's no magic pill or what have you. Like it literally has to be habitual to get to live in a healthy life. And so that's one of the hardest things to do. And it really being at Beachbody and seeing how you can do that effectively at scale is something that I've definitely carried with me throughout my career.
Interesting, interesting. So, kinda, did when did you know that you wanted to kinda run your own company? Was that something that you'd always had in the back of your mind and you were just kinda building up the experiences to get there, or was it
Yeah,
more opportunistic at the time?
it's a really good question. I would say it was, call it the dream from early on. that, yeah, I could absolutely, I would love to run a business, maybe my own someday. Like that had always been a seed that had planted. But then I started down this path, the wonderful company and Beachbody, and even after that, a business called Irwin Naturals, a supplement company, where I was the right hand, right, to the entrepreneur. I got pretty good at it, right? I was like, I like this. There's something here. I know how to do this well. I'm effective at partnering and helping scale essentially something that exists and, someone's vision, and I can help make that a reality, bring some strategy and some operational, experience to it. So I got good at it. I was like, I think this might be my path. But over time, the you know, the fire was building, right? And, this itch that had been planted a while back, it's, starting to become more prevalent as I'm seeing how to do this effectively and taking notes, right, along the way. And then at the other side of it, I was like, there's some things that I'm learning that I believe I could emulate, but there's also some things I'm like, I would do that differently. Right. I mean, and being the right hand, that's the reality is like you are executing on someone else's vision. And for better or for worse, that you're not always 100% aligned with the direction of that vision, right? And there are times where you feel like, you know, a little bit like, the stay in your lane type situation. I'm like, okay, I got it. Taking notes, right? I mean, taking notes over time. And it did, having those experiences did build up over time. So I kind of came back to that original intent. I was like, yeah, it's my time. It's my time to go out and build something that can have, I think an outsized impact on, things that I want to impact and do it on my way. I think I've mentioned to you, like with both hands on the steering wheel versus,
Yeah.
trying to reach over a little bit and,
Yeah.
and steer
No,
it.
I mean,
Right.
you're
So,
taking a shot. I get it.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, so I think it's a good time to transition into how you stepped into this specific space for the company.
Hmm.
Obviously, we talked about this a little bit earlier. You have a story I'm sure you'll share around what kind of got you really, really connected to the space
Yeah.
personally.
Hmm.
But then there's also kind of this evolution of healthcare, consumer healthcare is happening in the
Yeah.
background, right? You've kind of
Yeah.
been at the forefront of supplement company, kind of a shake company. You've seen this space. I'm curious, was it the breakthrough first or was it the connection to the cause first? And maybe you can share that story and help us triangulate which one, really from a timing perspective,
Yeah.
made you pull the trigger.
It's a really good question. It really was, for me starting this company. It really was the confluence of both. And I say the one side is the head, right? In terms of the market, the need, the opportunity, the trends, combining with the heart, right? I mean, that really spoke to me, my why becoming really apparent, right, to me. Um, I'll start with the heart. Like as you know, Brandon, like I've always been passionate about this space of helping people live healthier. It really went to another level based on a personal story, and sometimes it happens out of tragedy. And in this circumstance, that was one of those. So it's about my sister, Monica, who is truly my inspiration. Has um, I describe her as the most vivacious, colorful personality. She was hilarious, full of life, but she struggled with her health, in particular in her adult life, where she was obese, right? By the technical standard. She lived with diabetes. She had high blood pressure and just struggled with her health, right? And she would try lots of stuff, right, all the time, like diets and medications and fitness programs, what have you, but nothing really stuck. And she tragically passed away a few years back due to complications with her health and a high risk pregnancy where the baby didn't make it and Monica passed as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
that shook me to my core, as you can imagine. But it also lit a fire in me. The accepting the situation that one, this shouldn't have happened. There's no under no circumstances should this have happened. And there's multiple factors kind of leading into it. It's a separate conversation, but she should have had um easier ways to be in better control of her health. Empowerment, right? It's hard, too hard in this day and age for people to be in good control of their health. Like say the game is rigged, and we'll get into that, like the system, big food, kind of all these different things kind of coming at you. And this affected Monica and affects so many other people. And that's a big part of my inspiration and motivation is honoring Monica, my sister's legacy by helping other people, empowering other people with better control of their health. And so that was kind of really my motivation for
That's
why
that
I
was
decided to
the
start
why,
this.
right? That
That's
was
my why. That's
the
absolutely my
how.
why.
And by the
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
and that story, like you said, is really unfortunate to hear. I'm sure that was a very painful, process to work through, but, that's the fuel to really make sure that, you're on the missionary side of things where there's a lot of change to be made, and we'll get into that in a second, as far as
100.
how the US, the world, is kind of pushing people, subconsciously, consciously into these directions that aren't necessarily putting them in control of their health or in a good position to be in
For
control of their
sure.
health.
For sure.
But then there's the how piece, right? And
Yeah.
so when you were thinking about how to make this play, what had you been seeing in the landscape? Maybe educate us a little bit on the landscape of consumer health,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
where are we? What led to where we are today? And then what did you see to get you excited about, building a company facing the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and so being in this space, this is the call it the head part and the how. I knew there was a I describe it as a need, a pressing need, and an opportunity, right? From a business standpoint. Just knowing this space and knowing one, the problem, right? And knowing it, seeing it personally, professionally. Uh, I call it not to be dramatic, but I believe it's like our public health is in a state of emergency. When you look at, you know, the health condition, not just here domestically, globally, when you look at overweight and obesity, and when you look at diabetes, when you look at heart health, cholesterol, blood pressure, like these conditions are all they're massive, affects most of us. These aren't a subset. This is most
Fringe
of
thing,
us
right?
either directly in your life is dealing with one of those, or at a minimum, someone in your family is dealing with one or most of this. So it affects every household in this country, like these chronic conditions. And frankly, it's getting worse over time, despite the advancements in healthcare and in technology and science and food and beverage and stuff, like getting worse over time. So there's a huge, massive need. And it's an insatiable need, and it's unbelievably um just tied into our society today. So there's a need. I also feel there's an opportunity, right? And my belief, again, being in the space, I truly believe at my heart that there is massive latent consumer demand to live and feel better, to be healthier. But we have to find ways to make it easier to do so. I don't believe that the current kind of system of food in general, but even the better for you foods and supplements, I think they're helping, but I think it's a bit more on the margins. My thought is, let's go at the root cause. Like, can we create a business, products, a brand that can be foundational and fundamental to helping people transform their health, like empowerment, like in control with truly functional foods that make a difference that you can feel, that you can measure, and that can give you power to either sustain or reclaim great control of your health. And so that was the concept. I was like, I know there's a need, I know there's an opportunity, and I know that consumers are becoming more and more discerning about what they put in their bodies, what they're looking to do in their health, what they're looking to do in their life, and this connection with kind of health being well, right? And so I know that there's latent demand for it, but I just don't believe it's being met effectively within the space. And so that was the concept that I approached this opportunity before I even had real depth knowledge or understanding of the specific avenue or the specific products being around the gut and gut health being the pathway.
Okay.
So that's kind of
I'm glad you
the
took it there.
market concept.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
and so we're gonna double click this. Before we do that, I want to make it clear for the audience here. This is not medical advice. We are not prescribing, any specific health practice. This is strictly for the purpose of really understanding and helping provide a little bit of insight into how the body works, what are the specific components that folks might not be aware of, particularly in the underrepresented communities
Absolutely.
about health. So, consult with your physician for anything that you're actually going to implement in this case. But okay, let's unpack a little bit. Maybe let's start off again. We're going layman's with this.
Yeah.
We have a pie chart. All right.
Uh-huh.
100%. if you were just to break down the general categories of health, how would you break down that pie chart? Let's just start,
Yeah.
sleep, what you eat, exercise, like, how would you just
Yeah.
at the highest level break down.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. So I don't have exact percentages. Just know one thing. All of it all of it matters, and it's interconnected, right? Your mental health to your gut health to your metabolic health to the way that you sleep to your mood to your relationships to all of these factors have been shown scientifically to be interrelated, so you can't compartmentalize one thing into another. The one thing that I'll break down that's kind of generally believed and understood in terms of what you do about it. Right. I mean, a lot of people think of, and the general advice is, you know, eat better or less and exercise more, which are obviously directionally correct. We obviously need to go deeper than that. Like I said before, I do think exercise is really, really important, but I'd put that, 20%. I would put what you are putting into your body as the 80% of that pie chart, right? It is so foundational and fundamental. To nutrition is to your overall health and well-being, obviously directly physical, but it also, and we'll get into how it impacts your mental health well-being as well. So I'm a huge believer and proponent in nutrition and this term food as medicine. And that's obviously where me and my company SuperGut, where we aspire to focus in on really is how can we put the function back in food so that it's working for you, as opposed to against you. So it's all very interconnected.
No, that's
These
helpful.
different
I mean,
elements. Yeah.
okay, so now we're dealing in the 80%
Yeah.
piece, kind
Yeah.
of where you play gut. And we talked about this a little bit in a previous call, but can you just define what gut means for folks just so
Yeah.
we're all on the same page, and then maybe
Yeah.
a little bit down, what is gut health? Why is it
Yeah.
important? Why is it maybe kind of under understood in the overall scheme of things?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, we can obviously go deep here. And so what the gut is, let's talk about it first of all. It's your digestive system. And people are curious, like, why are we talking about digestion? Like, yeah, digestion's important, but my blood sugar is important or weight is important. Like, those are problems. What we know now is that your gut, like literally your digestive system, and in particular your large intestine, um, within your gut resides trillions of microbes, like tiny microorganisms, generally bacteria, but other microorganisms as well, that we know now have just an outsized role in not just managing your digestion, but in managing your overall health. Like it's actually hard to believe. Like, and historically we didn't know this, that your gut is so profound in terms of the impact on overall health. Why we know now and why you're hearing more talk about gut health and the gut microbiome and such, why it's becoming more prevalent, it really is based on science and technology advancements. Like, it does go back to the cost of sequencing DNA, right? Actually understanding the composition of your gut, like based largely on fecal samples, because that gives you an indication of what's happening in your gut and your digestive. The cost of that has, come down dramatically from tens of thousands of dollars to sequence DNA to literally hundreds of dollars. And what that has spawned is the volume of research related to the gut and the microbiome. What's happening in there has gone through the roof, right? And so we have a much clearer picture of what's happening in your gut, and that the composition and the fact that there are these trillions of bacteria, and so we now understand what it looks like. We also now have better understanding of what some of them are doing for you or doing against you, because put it in simple terms, the bacteria in your gut have such an outsized role in your health. There are some good bugs, we say, that are beneficial, that are really responsible for helping keep you healthy. But also, there are bad bugs, right, that actually keep you down. What you want is a well balanced, healthy gut. You want more of the good guys. You want to keep them strong and healthy, and you want less of the bad guys in your gut.
Okay. A couple of
And
questions just to clarify.
yeah. Go ahead.
What are some of the things that someone may experience if their gut is in bad health? So
Yeah,
is you know, disease? Is it mood? Can you just kind of speak to maybe
yeah.
some of the links so people can kind of understand how that shows up?
Yeah, for sure. It shows up differently in different people, right? And so there's not just one answer. So what I will say is it's all tied to the fact that your gut really is your foundation for health. And so when you do have issues in your health, in your life, in your wellness, the odds are, almost regardless of what it is, that there's at least some tie or connection to what's happening in your gut. And so think of it this way, like many times the first symptom of poor gut health is digestion, right? I mean, it is kind of the home for digestion, right? Your gut is responsible for processing the food that you eat, breaking them down, turning them into nutrients, producing vitamins, tapping into systems in your body. And when that system is broken down, it generally initially can show up in digestive issues. So things like lots of bloating, even nausea or irregularity, not being able to go constipated or going way too often, diarrhea, things of that nature. Like those kind of gut digestive issues typically show up in digestion, right? Poor digestion. That's the first sign typically of a poor gut. But it typically doesn't stop there because a lot of times a poor balanced gut also then connects to, your metabolic health. So things like just how your body's ability to break down food, manage blood sugar levels in a healthy range, manage your appetite, help keep your metabolism going, not putting on weight. Those factors typically have a connection back to what's going on in your gut as well. So literally, and there's been many studies about this. There are commonalities when you look at someone who's living with diabetes versus someone who has healthy blood sugar. There's a different microbiome profiles between those two individuals, right? To give you a sense of, the fact that there's actually correlation and frankly some causation happening there between your metabolic health and what's happening in your gut microbiome. Other things that show up are things like inflammation, throughout your body in different areas. A lot of times that starts with what happens in your gut. Also, if you're getting sick too often, your immune system is largely regulated by what's happening in your gut as well. And so literally it's like all these different dimensions. If something is wrong in your health, the odds are that there's something wrong in your gut as well.
Got it. So the gut is important. All right. How do we
Long story short, yes,
how do we
gut
assess
matters.
what is the measurement to assess gut health?
Yeah, there's not it's a great question. I'd say there's not just one accepted measure of gut health. That's actually what makes it a bit more difficult. It's a bit more, you know, esoteric, kind of how you define a healthy gut, right? Because it's not like a blood sugar level where it's this is healthy below this level, this is unhealthy above that, or it's not like blood pressure or weight, right? You step on a scale, Gut health is not the same. It's not that easily, diagnosed. I will say there are emerging businesses and brands coming around this diagnostics, this gut diagnostic area to try to profile what your gut microbiome looks like, and therefore what you might need to do to orient yourself in a healthier direction. I will say we're still in the early stages, right? From my understanding, is it's not definitive. Right, there's not just one profile of what means a healthy gut, because gut, with these trillions of bacteria, all of us look somewhat different, so it's kind of really difficult, if not impossible, to just say this is what a healthy gut looks like. But there are indicative directions that lean in one or another. What you're starting to see more of is physicians, right, that are starting to actually pay attention to gut health and order fecal samples to understand that profile and to give you some better indication as to if there are significant imbalances. Those can tend to show up. I project in, like, whatever, 5 to 10 years from now, this is going to be common, right? You're going to be taking poop tests when you go get your annual checkup. You're not just giving blood. You're going to have a fecal test as well, and there's going to be better advanced science to give you a sense of the state of your gut health based on the results of that. So it's hard to have a one diagnostic that tells
Okay.
you. It's yeah.
Okay. No, and that's helpful. And I think this conversation has been around, kind of the holistic picture of health. And I think that is probably the right way to think about it. But at the end of the day, a lot of this conversation is about weight control and
Yeah,
these drugs that are popping on the scene now, and they're doing something related to the gut
yeah,
to, cause significant weight loss relative to solutions in the past. And so
yeah,
I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe share anything else that you wanted to in terms of context for the gut before we kind of transition to this. What is happening in the landscape? What are we seeing with these new drugs hitting the market? So I wanted to give you,
yeah.
an opportunity to kind of just provide any more context before we go there.
One little bit more of additional context to provide, because I think it's important in the subject of gut health, is as you see, we are becoming more and more knowledgeable about the importance of gut health. One of the things that's important is to understand things to do about it. And the first thing and most popular thing that people know of or have heard about is probiotics, right? And so, just definitional, just for to help everyone, think of probiotics as trying to add additional good bugs into your gut, right? I mean, sort of probiotic is intended to be is a live bacteria, call it some of these good bugs, to add already to the trillions of bugs that are resident in you. Now, the reality is not all of them work and are actually effective, right? So you really have to do your research to find ones that work. On the other side of things, there's what are called prebiotics. That's actually what we focus on more at SuperGut. Think of prebiotics as the food for the bugs that are in your gut. So prebiotics, by definition, they actually bypass the traditional digestive path, like in your stomach and even through your small intestine, to make it into your large intestine to feed the good bugs and essentially to crowd out the bad bugs in your gut. So I thought that's an important context, because that really is that process of having good bugs in your gut and having them flourish and being nourished is key to maintaining a healthy gut. And then that will lead into the next conversation.
Got it. Okay. Appreciate you setting the table there. So let's get into it. Can you just articulate what we're seeing right now? And we're seeing a lot of headlines in Hollywood. Everyone in
Yeah.
Hollywood's on these quote unquote miracle drugs. That, it's a lot of ways to think about this. One, there is this fact that these drugs are delivering significant results.
Hmm.
And so a lot of folks are flocking to it. That's number one. The other piece of it is there's a shortage of these drugs because of how many people are flocking to it for cosmetic reasons. There's folks who, my understanding is, have diabetes. These drugs were intended for folks that have diabetes who now, are losing access to the drug.
Hmm.
There's a safety piece to it where some of these drugs are really new and folks are wondering, what is the risk associated with it? And is there another shoe that's going to drop? And I think the last piece of it, and this is something we're going to touch on as well, is what does this mean in terms of, the business of healthcare, right? Consumer
Hmm.
driven healthcare.
Yeah.
And obviously you have a lot of these pharmaceutical companies kind of behind these drugs. What economic opportunity you think will unlock in addition to health opportunity that will unlock for folks as a result of this movement? So a lot in there. Let's just start off
Yeah.
with the landscape. Can you just give us
Yeah.
an update on the landscape?
Yeah, no, I'll start with the landscape. So at the big picture, the prevalence of metabolic health diseases is massive, right? So start with diabetes. It's about 13% of the US population is officially diagnosed as with diabetes. By the way, another, call it 35 to 40% has pre-diabetes. So if you think that about half of us are not managing healthy blood sugar. The challenge with diabetes, as with other chronic diseases, it's progressive and chronic. And the vast majority of folks, once you get to that point where you are officially living with diabetes, the vast majority of folks are living with diabetes for the rest of their lives and are, by definition, need to be on medication in order to manage that condition, right? The other factor is when you have one of these, metabolic diseases such as diabetes, it tends to be a gateway disease, and so it tends to ride along with other diseases, in particular obesity. And there's interplay in terms of there's questions of chicken and the egg, which came first, like diabetes versus obesity, or obesity lead to diabetes. And there's different school of thoughts. What we know is they tend to ride along with each other, right? And so there's a significant history around drugs to treat obesity and drugs to treat diabetes, from everything from like pills, metformin, to insulin therapies and others. Recently there has been some breakthroughs on drugs that were specifically targeted for diabetes, and you see these brand names like Wegovy and Ozempic, and at the easiest way to explain them is they're based on these hormones. They're synthetically produced, right, for these medications, but naturally, they're hormones that your body produces in your gut, right, that are responsible for sensing hunger and for understanding insulin response. So how your body responds when you consume food, to how much insulin your pancreas needs to produce to manage blood sugar levels, and how you control appetite, et cetera. So these are things that happen naturally in your body, in your gut. Um, these are synthetic drugs tapping into that, right? that is basically they're injections, right? That are concentrated dosages. And you hear these terms like GLP-1 or even GIP, like that's the technology. Those are the hormones that these breakthrough drugs are based on. Now, what's breakthrough is that they've been shown to have really significant impact both on blood sugar management and then, why they're becoming even more popular is on weight reduction as well. Like people are seeing really significant weight loss associated with these drugs. Again, these drugs were designed, clinically studied to work in people living with diabetes and obesity, and have now been approved not both for diabetes but also for medical treatment and prescription for obesity as well. Breakthrough, like really significant impact.
So is
The
it so much that these deliver I guess the GLP science has broken through, or on a regulatory side, the use case has been expanded, and that's kind of what's triggering the momentum we're seeing right now?
There's both. It actually is science and technology driven, right? To see just how impactful these drugs have been on metabolic health, both for blood sugar and for weight loss. And then that's what has unlocked some of the regulatory pathways where it's not just diagnosed or prescribed for blood sugar, it's also prescribed for weight loss. Again, for those with a chronic, metabolic disease, by physicians is what it's intended to. And so it is pretty breakthrough, both the science but also regulatory is why it's out there more, right? And then as you described at the outset, what we're seeing now is it's expanding beyond those living with a chronic disease and getting into the consumer ecosystem. And you're seeing a lot of celebrities that have privileged access, right, to get, you know, doctors and physicians to write, off prescription, off label to give access to some of these breakthrough drugs to have an easier path towards weight loss, is what you're seeing more and more of out there.
Got it. And so is there anything you wanna add? You mentioned that it's injectables that are basically kind of mimicking or giving you more of things you already have in your body that regulate things like appetite, etcetera. Anything else we should know about what it actually does?
Yeah. Well, two things. I would say one is, as with any drug, right, there are going to be side effects associated with it. It's like really concentrated, it's really powerful drugs, and there's always side effects that happen with that. And in this case, what you tend to see based on the literature are things like uh, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, constipation, a lot of digestive issues tend to be the common side effects associated with these drugs, right? And so that's one thing to know. Again, as with most drugs, there can be side effects. They tend to be a bit more significant with such a potent and powerful drug such as these out there. I'd say the second thing to know, it starts at the outset. The substances, the technology that these drugs are based on is essentially mimicking what your healthy body is meant to do naturally. And the way that that happens naturally is back to your gut. It literally is what happens when you consume the food and the nutrients that are good for the beneficial bugs in your gut. So, in particular, fiber, prebiotic fiber, like what I talked about, and frankly, what we focus on is SuperGut. That is the good food for the good bugs in your gut. And just to get a little technical for a second, when that happens, the good bugs break down those fibers, right? They multiply, they strengthen, and they actually produce byproducts. They're called short chain fatty acids. You'll hear one like called butyrate, and it's been connected to lots of health in so many different directions. One of the ways is your metabolic health. That butyrate, it stimulates production of these hormones in your gut. This GIP, this GLP-1 that are responsible for regulating insulin, for appetite control, et cetera. And so when you have a healthy gut microbiome, when you are consistently feeding your gut the nutrients that it needs, your body is actually naturally producing these hormones that are responsible for keeping your blood sugar stable and for keeping your weight under control. So it is possible to get this naturally. It just takes healthy habits and the right diet in order to get essentially the same effects that
Right.
you can get from these drugs, but in a natural way. It is possible.
So from that perspective, a lot of people consider it to be a miracle drug because you don't have to go through the process of doing things naturally, but you're getting that same result. What's your and again, um, this is just your own opinion. This is not by any
Yes.
means
Yes.
official guidance or anything. Some of this is just the newness of it, right? And I think a lot of folks
Uh-huh.
are thinking like, okay, what's the catch, right? I can deal with a little bit of
Yeah.
nausea,
Right. Right.
whatever. What are your thoughts in terms of, maybe a worst case scenario situation or something to be aware of or, be conscious of as folks, are kind of really trying to understand with it being so new, what could
Yeah. Yeah, so a couple of thoughts, and obviously, like you said at the outset, you should definitely consult your physician when it comes to any medication, in particular something as new as these. You should definitely be doing any consideration of taking these. You should definitely be consulting your physician. So obviously, there's the side effects, which we talked about, which are relatively common with these drugs. I would say a secondary thing to be cognizant of um, is the fact that it's in many ways treating the symptoms of your metabolic health challenges, so your blood sugar control and your weight. And there's a question as to when you stop, what happens then, and might you be in a position if you haven't changed your habits? Yes, you might lose weight while you're on this medication, but once you stop, if you haven't changed your habits, odds are you are likely going to return back to baseline, right? Into the body and the metabolism, the metabolic health that you saw beforehand. So there's that aspect of it. And then finally, I think there still is to be borne out kind of what are the long-term safety or risk effects of these, drugs. And I would say in particular in populations that are not diagnosed with diabetes or not specifically diagnosed with obesity, who these drugs were originally designed for and what they have gone approval for and what they did clinical trials for. And so they haven't been designed nor prescribed for the general population, as of yet. And so that does create risk whenever any drug, and these are included, are used outside of the original intent, what has been proven for not just the effectiveness, but the safety of these drugs, right? I mean, so it's just something to be cognizant and aware of. If you're a consumer and want to lose weight and want to use one of these drugs, just eyes wide open, definitely consult your physician.
got it? And I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I think that's a good segue to talk about SuperGut, but let's put it in the framing first of the economic opportunity that's kind of sitting behind this revolution. You just went through some stats. 50% of folks in the US are diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Right.
Globally, the number is much, much larger. Now you have kind of this set of breakthrough science that is a game changer in a lot of ways. You can make the argument that a huge industry has already been built around this demographic of folks, and now you have something that seems to be really effective hitting the market. What are your observations in terms of, what is going to be the economic impact of this? One, potentially for like some of the players who may get potentially, taken out of the game because now folks are, you know, focusing on this solution. But
Hmm.
what do you see in terms of growth, pullback, the impact of the landscape, and what type of opportunity economically are you seeing in the space as a result of this
Yeah.
breakthrough science?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I obviously don't have the full crystal ball, but I can share my perspective on it. I think there's going to be um, winners and quote unquote losers, right, coming from this direction. I think this is what you see is these drugs coming in the same time a broader evolution of the consumerization of healthcare, right? Where more and more consumers are looking to, for better for worse, take power into their own hands, right? Versus just depending on the healthcare system in a way that you would have, historically. And I think these drugs are entering into that as well. That's why you see these aren't just restricted to those that it was designed for, living with diabetes, obesity, like consumers who are not necessarily diagnosed with one of those conditions finding their way to get a hold of these medications. And as a result, like where some of the opportunity lies, where I see it kind of come from the consumer angle, I know that there are businesses out there that are being created around how do we make that happen more efficiently, right? And so like consumer facing businesses, but that have physicians behind the scenes. So it's getting more and more in the world of telehealth, right? That can actually prescribe these drugs and make it, take out some of the barriers to make it more accessible to get your hands on, medications like this. I think is a big opportunity that is, I think will continue in that direction. I also think that there's a big opportunity in more my space where I come from, like as part of this consumerization of healthcare. I think there's also a continued significant, like I said, in many cases, latent demand for consumers that would rather be in better control of their health, but not through pharmaceutical intervention, right? I think that's an additional big part of the consumerization of healthcare is empowerment, in control, not needing, it's expensive, medication, shots, needles, etc. And so opportunities for right businesses like ours and others that are providing functional food as medicine that's empowering, right? And I think that's both services, I think that's foods as well. So that you see things like diagnostics, continuous glucose monitors for healthy individuals that are becoming more progressive in understanding healthy blood sugar is not just important for those living with diabetes, it's important as a preventative measure. It's important to optimize my health and metabolism and my weight. And so you're seeing that a lot in people that are wearing other forms of monitoring devices to try to stay on top of their health game. So there's a devices and services, but there's also consumer products as well, right? And that's obviously the space that we play in. We are trying to be a part of that, kind of helping people empower people through food, right? This food is medicine, and I think this consumerization of healthcare also brings some tailwinds in our spaces as well.
Got it. And behind you, I see, does it say patent? Is that a certificate behind
Yes,
you?
it does. Strategically,
The ultimate
oh, and
flex,
what is
the ultimate
this?
flex going
What
on
is
back there.
this? What is this I see?
I love it. So let's talk about it for a second. I want to talk about SuperGut. We talked about some of the breakthrough science. What breakthrough science is SuperGut specifically capitalizing on and has
Yeah.
protection behind it? And why are you excited about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating time in our business, especially with some of the advent of some of this gut microbiome driven technology making it into healthcare. We're like, it's great. It brings actually visibility to the important role of the gut, right? And that's what we are tapping into a natural way to really heal, balance your gut to keep you healthy in a natural way. So yeah, so SuperGut, the overall business is we create gut health superfoods that are both um, highly functional, like literally that empower you that, ways that you can feel and measure, like improve not just your gut health, but your overall health, metabolism, mood, sleep, etc. But at the same time, we're doing it through food. And I believe in order to be effective, it's got to be something that you enjoy, right? And so we try to create food functional, but yes, food that you would eat and enjoy, even if it wasn't, foundational and transformational to your health. And so that includes, shakes, and that includes bars, and we also sell our own fiber mix on a standalone basis. The technology that we have tapped into and we've created our own proprietary blend is of a unique class of these prebiotic fibers, in particular one that's called resistant starch that has a significant amount of clinical evidence behind it, just the positive impact it has on your gut, your digestion, and your overall metabolism. The problem is we hardly get any of this in our normal Western diet, like big food, fast food, highly processed food. Like they are stripped of nutrients, in particular fiber, and in particular the unique fibers that we put into our products. So that's the science that we've tapped into, creating our own blend and then putting it into delicious tasting food. And that's what we have a patent on, right? Because what we've done is quite unique in the combination of different fibers, the levels, and the ratios, as well as the application of those into food products. And therefore, the results that we're able to show and demonstrate that you're able to get out of these and being able to create something unique and to be able to produce results that are, call it unexpected, is what allowed us to do something that's pretty rare in the food space, to actually have a patent protection on the intellectual property that we've created for our current products. And then, that it actually accounts for future iterations of products that we can create off of the same technology.
Love it, and congratulations. You mentioned that the first peer review research that confirmed the efficacy of your product was published today. So congratulations on
It's
that.
a
I think
big
that
day.
speaks to
Appreciate it.
in a very
Appreciate it.
noisy landscape. How do you differentiate, and obviously having peer
Yeah.
review research around the science helps a lot. So I would encourage folks to definitely check out SuperGut. If you're interested in learning more about SuperGut, hit me up. Mark, how can people get in touch with you if they want to hear more about the products, or what's the website so that people?
Yeah, yeah. Easiest thing is the website is supergut.com. Right now we're 100% direct to consumer, so that's where you find us. I think going forward, we obviously are looking to expand distribution, both other online like Amazon as well as physically in retail as well. Like I'm a big believer in accessibility and having our products available where people look to shop is something that is a big part of our future. But for now, supergut.com. And we're also very active, across social channels as well. So in addition to products, we really focus on providing content to help the conversation like we're having, right? And just how do we raise the overall collective awareness and understanding that gut health is really important? And why does it matter? What's prebiotic, what's probiotic? We think that these are really important topics that we'd love to continue to elevate awareness of this topic. And obviously, love for you to consider SuperGut as a product, but overall, we think it's just important for all of us, and I'd say especially communities of color to really understand the importance of gut health on overall health. It's actually something we didn't talk about too much. It's just, as you know, Brain, this is about that we have talked about is
Yeah.
the importance of what we're doing. And one of the things that inspires and drives me, like, we obviously have a significant public health ambition, right? This food is medicine empowerment for people and addressing these significant conditions. But specifically, as a Black founder, I want to be a part of the solution to close some of the health disparity gaps that disproportionately affect Black and brown communities, because all those conditions we talk about, when you look at them, every single one of them is significantly more likely for Black and brown communities across diabetes, obesity, hypertension, cholesterol, et cetera. And it's been that way for far too long, and it's a very complex, multiple reasons why. I think we have an opportunity to actually close some of that gap. So we hope to be there to be a part of the solution for that.
I'm glad you took it there, and that was kinda where I wanted to close out. Can you give us a vision of the future? So what we're seeing right now is a world where there seems to be some pretty advanced science kind of hitting the market. It seems to be likely this will, achieve wide scale adoption and it actually address some of these fundamental issues, at least at a surface level, which you could argue is better than nothing at the end of
For
the day.
sure. For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but what's your vision? And so, what are you excited about when you think about the future of consumer health? What we have now, you kinda mentioned a world where there's more monitoring happening, there's more kinda, co types of data collected.
Yeah.
What excites you about the future of consumer health, and do you think that we can you mentioned big food and all these kind of forces against the average person.
Right.
What's your what are you excited about? What's your vision of the future in the next, call it 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, like it's all within this theme of the consumerization of healthcare, and it's all about the empowerment angle of that, right? So my vision, right, in this 5 to 10 year time frame, is that it's the game, which is really really difficult today, is flipped on its head, right? Whereas today is really, really hard with everything impacting you in society and big food and high, sugar foods, et cetera, like are so widely available and pumped, down your throat, advertising, et cetera. I envision a world where that's flipped on its head, where the consumer is in power, where brands like ours, like big food, have acquiesced and figured out that this is super important and that consumers are demanding that their food actually do something for them. And that brands, businesses, etc., are actually creating foods that have the function back in, but still doing it in a way that's easy, that's accessible, right? And so as a consumer, you are in control and you're not having to go way out of your way to have control. It actually is the things that you love, that you want to have, that you enjoy in your life, you can have, and there's a healthier version of them that is empowering you with more control over your health and over your life. That's the aspect of it that I'm excited about. And obviously we aspire to play a role in that, but real impact is having others follow suit. Like, let's put it out there. Let's raise the bar, right? And pull others in this direction of true function back into food. I believe that we're not going to get to that, promised land through the healthcare system. I don't think we're going to get there. Even with these breakthrough drugs, I don't think medications are going to get you there. I also don't think we're just going to, the current state of supplements and better for you, I don't think is fundamental enough. I really believe it's food. I believe in order for us to cross that chasm into empowerment and control, I think it needs to be food. I think it has to be accessible and part of your everyday diet, right? For that to be the case. So that's what I'm excited about. And we're obviously hoping to help lead the charge in that direction.
Well, there you have it. Food is the way, it
There
sounds
you
like.
go. There you go.
Just wanna say, thank you, Mark, for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy to really educate folks on consumer health, gut health, the landscape, and also just the different, paths that people should have available to them now and in the near future to kind of take control of their health. And so with that, just want to say again, thanks. I would encourage everyone to try SuperGut. someone asked in the comments, can you take SuperGut products with these injectable drugs? Is that something that is something
It
that you
is absolutely. Like, listen, it's tapping into the same science. There's complementary benefits on the upside. But one of the, I think, really interesting things when we talked about some of the side effects of some of these drugs, these are aspects of your health that our products actually improve, right? And so when you talk about some of the digestive issues that come, the nausea, the bloating, the constipation, these are things that our product SuperGut actually helps regulate. And so it's actually referenced, our chief medical science officer, like we
complimentary?
actually included this, right? That there's a perspective to be compliment if these are things that you need in your life and are prescribed. Absolutely. Actually consider natural solutions that can be complementary to the benefits and also help potentially alleviate some of those negative side effects. And, our product is definitely one we've shown clinically, right, that we actually do alleviate some of these digestive systems that tend to come along as side effects of those
You
those
you
drugs.
can get
That's
a
a great
nice
question.
little lift in this in all the buzz
Absolutely.
that's happening.
Absolutely. And
Someone
by the
made the
way, you can carry on with, because this is lifestyle habit, right? This is actually something you can carry on even after you might stop taking, one of those quite expensive drugs.
someone joked in the comments, is the moderator married to a lawyer? He knows what disclaimers to give. So with that note, hey Mark, we're excited about what you got going on. Excited about the options that are being given to consumers now to really manage and take control. Thanks again. I would encourage folks to look out for SuperGut. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more in the press. I think you're doing around a podcast. I would encourage folks to tell a friend, and get people
Appreciate that.
up to speed on these exciting um, you know uh, products hitting the market. So with that, Mark, we will adjourn. Thanks again for your time. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Brandon. All right.